the narrative has been one-sided all through.
So make it relatable.
Make it
relevant to our
relatable,
lives and our
make it
experiences.
relatable, and put the human beings at the heart
I love
of it.
that.
Put the human beings at the heart of it, because also that is what has been missing.
I'm Natasha Kimani. I'm a governance and public policy expert and the host of Talk to Me Direct podcast. In this series, I speak with 8 incredible thinkers in Africa, people working to solve complex challenges across the board. We discuss the civic space in Africa, the physical and online spaces where people come together to exercise their rights in shaping our societies. The civic space is important because it provides everyone with an opportunity to contribute to a thriving, inclusive society. Join us for these diverse topics, from ensuring technology positively serves society to ensuring that communities come together to increase women and youth's participation in decision-making. Toyin Akinniyi is Vice President, Africa at Luminate, and in this final episode in this series, we analyze funders' perspectives in the African civic space and discuss what should be prioritized so that people have the information, rights, and power to participate in decision-making. Welcome.
Thank you. It's a delight to be chatting with you, the amazing Natasha.
No, Toyin, is blue your color? Because you look beautiful today.
Thank you.
You're lighting up our sets.
Thank you. I can say the same of your green.
Is it your favorite color?
But blue is one of my favorite colors. And I love blue because it's communicates calmness. There's a shade of blue that I really love, which is ocean blue, turquoise. Yeah.
And would you say that calm represents who you are, a calm personality?
It's one of my it's one of the expressions of me. Yeah.
Toyin, you have had an incredible career in the development sector. You've done incredible work, especially around media organizations, media development, and governance institutions. What led you into this path? What made you say, this is what I want to do for majority of my life?
Right. And it's an interesting story. I think nearly 20 years ago, after my master's in peace and conflict studies, I spent some time at an organization that was working on ICT for development, information communication and technology for development. And I was working at the time with children, indigent children within that community, trying to help them to learn to use a computer. And I had also worked with some women in 2 major markets in Nigeria, one in the north and one in the southwest. And it was just incredibly rewarding to see those people go from zero knowledge to, like, I don't know, maybe not 100, but somewhere in between. But just to see how much, people's lives can be transformed by just learning one additional skill. And the experience, there was a lot of projects that I worked on, but these were the 2 that stood out for me then. At the time, I had just, completed my master's, and I was sure that I was going to work in the development sector. And I was attracted, of course, to issues of women, of children, but also, obviously, information communication technology at the time.
May I ask why women and children were particularly dear to your heart?
Okay. Children, obviously, because I could see, working with them at the time, of course, I have children. Their issues would also matter to me. But at the time, the innocence, the sheer innocence, and the malleability, I guess, that they always come into those sessions with. And there's also one of the kids that I always remember. He was slightly older than the rest of them. And just picking up the skill at the time, I could immediately see just 2 or 3 years after that, because I continued to work within the sector, even though I left that city. This child went on to into the university. His life was transformed. So, and women, obviously, because they are the backbone of our society, but the society that we live in currently doesn't appear to recognize or appreciate that reality, and we see a lot of marginalization of women. And we've also seen examples of where women are empowered and what it can mean for the sectors and the society, the sectors where they work and the society at large.
Thank you. Toyin, maybe you could let us know what is Luminate? There are people listening and they're like, what is Luminate? What does Luminate do and why is your work important?
So Luminate works to ensure that everyone, including those who are underrepresented, have the information, the rights, and the power to influence the decisions that affect their lives and to be able to drive change in the different spaces where they are. And we work in different regions. We work in Africa, we work in Latin America, we work in Asia, and we have a global programs team that does the same thing, at intersection of the two goals that we seek to advance, which are civic and political participation and building healthy information ecosystems. And across these two goals, we seek to explore and encourage people to see how technology can work for democracy and not against it. And we've seen instances of that not happening. And so our work supporting civil society organizations, supporting media, is trying to ensure that democracy can thrive across the world, but also in the spaces where we work, in the countries and regions where we work, and that technology can be an enabler, can actually work for and not against democracy.
Luminate strives to increase the participation of underrepresented people, especially in civic and political spaces. Why is this important for them to participate and engage?
It's important for everyone to be able to have agency in society. And in Africa, for instance, we look at the demographic. The majority demographic in Africa is the youth. And I will use Nigeria as an example. We make the joke about how that women are 49 point something percent and men are 51 point something. Essentially that is 50-50%. But we find that our civic spaces, our political spaces, and society in general doesn't represent or reflect that reality. We also find that young persons, even though they are the majority, we talk about them being the future. Actually, I believe young persons are our now. Yes. And so the processes that we have in place in the countries where these young persons reside and call their homes in Africa should reflect that reality, but that's not what we see. So Luminate believes that inclusion, representation are values of democracy that every country should uphold. And one of the ways that we try to do that is by supporting civil society organizations who align with this mission and this appreciation of what democracy can be and should be and what that should look like in our societies. And so we support them to drive change within this space, to ensure that that is no longer the reality, that young persons can have the agency and can be fortified to understand and to better, in fact, participate in the processes that actually, create the world that they're going to live in the next couple of years.
Toyin, on a personal note, what do you love about working at Luminate?
I love the people that I get to work with. Recently, we convened our partners from within the region who we've been working with in the last couple of years. And the sheer energy, the passion, the excitement in the room for change, in Africa was infectious, but for me, it was also energizing. it was good to see people unprovoked, like I'd like to say, just looking at their societies and saying we're going to work to effect change. I call them change makers. So interacting with people like that is one way that I draw energy and excitement and the encouragement to keep going. And I think, yeah, I will do that again and again.
What did you love most about that experience, especially engaging with organizations and individuals you support? What are the things you took home with you when you returned to Abuja?
Right. Something that was clear to everyone was collaboration and the amazing things that can happen when you put change makers with a lot of energy in the same room. From day one, people were clustering and having meetings to talk about, across borders, that is, talking about how to effect change in their countries, but also in Africa. So there's the collaborations that emerge from that process. It's also a reminder to me about what the power of partnerships at the founder level, but how we can also work as Luminate to foster more of those collaborations. So that was something that stood out. What also stood out for me is how important our work in building resilient organizations is. The fact that Luminate supports these organizations to carry out individual projects and all, but we also invest in building, sustainability and resilience within the civil society ecosystem. And I could just see the reward of that investment. And the conversations there were sharp. They were very energizing. I keep using the word energizing because it was a week-long event, but I wasn't tired by the time I was leaving. They gave me a lot of homework, a lot of things to chew on,
Reflect on.
and a lot of things to reflect on and to sort of feed back into our work and the way that we serve the field.
Toyin, you've spoken about collaboration, and this has also been emphasized by two previous guests we've had on this show, Polly Rungu from Maono Space and Chineye Wunaka from Nigeria Youth Futures Fund. They spoke about the importance for civil society organizations to partner and collaborate, but they also mentioned that collaboration doesn't happen that often. How can we ensure that there's more collaboration in the future and that civil society organizations are not intimidated by collaborations, but actually want to collaborate even more?
I think one way to do something better is to keep doing it. And I guess from the few collaborations that I've seen grow organically, what I've seen is that all of the actors involved found some commonality between their work and the change that they are trying to drive within their different spaces. And so the more that we foster these collaborations and we provide the spaces and platforms for people to see the need to collaborate and to see their work, even though the work is done in different spaces and targeting different contexts and regions, it is towards one goal. I imagine for Luminate partners, it will be towards ensuring that democracy thrives in the spaces where people work, and that people can better participate and do so safely. And so, depending on where you are seated, that is the goal. So, the more that we emphasize the goal and the commonality of interests and of approaches, then I think the more that these collaborations can grow.
Maybe you could, as a funder, maybe you could let us know, do you see collaboration as a good thing? Would that incentivize you as a funder to want to engage with grantees? Is it a good sign of a thriving organization?
I would say so. I think it's a sign. It's not a deal breaker.
Absolutely.
I need to put that out there.
Absolutely.
But it shows a level of awareness self-awareness, but also awareness of the ecosystem or the context that organization or that organization, I guess, works within. And that self-awareness or reflection will surface the thoughts and the appreciation that we don't work in silos when we are trying to address systems. And working in silos will ensure that we keep working, but we may not be able to hit we may not be able to get the impact that we desire. And I think just seeing how much people are open to collaborating with others, because those collaborations are not only for the specific projects or the specific work that they're working towards. It's also an opportunity to learn what works, what doesn't work, and to learn what approaches people are exploring across the world. And so if an organization appreciates all of this, it's a good sign, because as Luminate, we're trying to build systems. We're trying to work and encourage people to see some of the issues that we have outlined, that we're working towards as systems. And if we're tackling systems, like I said earlier, then you probably want to learn what others are doing around those, systems. So that's the way that I would view an organization like that. And in fact, if they are not open to it, it's just showcasing to them what's worked with previous or current or collaborations, and encourage them to explore the learnings that exist with such collaborations.
We intimated earlier about Africa being a young population. And earlier on this podcast, we spoke with Lindiwe Mazibuko, founder of Future Elect, and she emphasized the importance of women, young people, and marginalized communities participating in political office, running for political office, and the importance of that. What are the challenges you have seen or believe that women and young people face when they're running for political office?
We know that across Africa, but actually beyond Africa, there are cultures that do not encourage, that gender to participate or to have a voice, to speak openly, to be able to represent their people. But that's changing. We're seeing that increasingly changing. And the work of Future Elect that you mentioned earlier and several others, the School of Politics, Policy and Governance in Nigeria, for instance, there are countless others who are working within the space to ensure that changes. So those are challenges. There is also, as I referenced earlier, the role of technology. And we see that we are becoming an increasingly digital world. And some of the gains that have been recorded in ensuring that more women participate, more young persons participate, are being eroded by, misinformation, the rise of misinformation, disinformation, and some of the gains that we've recorded to such that more young persons, more women are participating in politics, are putting themselves forward. Some of those gains are being eroded by technology and the digital spaces where they have to engage, where they have to communicate and share information, where they receive information. I know that I've reflected in my past, in one of my past articles, how that having laws and policies that encourage more women to participate would be helpful. So the quota system, for instance, that has been embraced by Kenya and Rwanda and some other countries. However, as progressive as that is, and that is amazing, and I encourage other countries to consider that, we find that even for the women who put themselves forward, in Kenya, if I reference the last election, women were being targeted online, for instance. Yes. And what does this mean for other women who are looking to, approach, who are willing to put themselves forward? So that serves as a deterrent, even for the women who've been harassed online and have faced a lot of attacks. It becomes a pointing experience, and then they don't want to continue. So technology can serve to help us to have more and more participation of these demographics, but it can also be a source of some sort of deterrent, for those who are already thinking to do so. So this is one of the things that we're trying to emphasize and raise awareness about, and we're supporting organizations who are working to ensure that our digital spaces are safer and encourage more participation and more inclusion, and encourage everyone, including those who either to have been marginalized and underrepresented by harmful laws and practices, to be able to do so.
Toyin, talk to me direct. What is the role of media and civil society in strengthening democracy in Africa?
Right. Civil society and media have a huge role to play in strengthening democracy. And we've seen them play this role excellently over the years. In the last couple of years, there have been challenges, including attempts to constrict the space for civil liberties, for free expression, for journalists to be able to do their work. But the role that, civil society organizations who are mobilizing excellently well across the world, and in Africa especially, the role that the media in Africa, irrespective of all the challenges, is playing to hold power to account, to ensure that our democratic institutions function well, that role continues to be important. And so the role that we play as Luminate, and others who are focusing on and supporting the media ecosystem and the civil society ecosystem, to ensure that the information space is healthy, is free of misinformation and disinformation, and are supportive of these spaces. And our support for civil society organizations who, continue to hold power to account continues.
I think my follow-up question then would be, why is narrative change work important for Luminate?
So narrative change, the way that we approach it at Luminate, is not for its own sake. We did some research into how and why young persons participate in civic processes and political processes. And we found out that we have different archetypes and different types of young persons even. There are those who would not care about voting, for instance, and there are those who are interested but do not feel like they have agency. There are those who are interested, but they just don't know how. There are different archetypes and different groups. And narrative change helps us to communicate across these divides. So to craft the messages, to craft the message around participation and the protection of the civic space and why that is important, to craft the message around healthy information ecosystems, the role of big tech, the role of governments, of regulations, these very, I think, sometimes technical terms, to be able to break them down. And narrative change for us is a big tool for advancing democracy also, because we're meeting people where they are at.
That's exactly what I wanted to say. It sounds like narrative change work ensures that you understand where people are, then meet them
And you meet
and
them where
engage
they're
them
at.
at their different levels,
Yeah.
which I think is brilliant. Earlier on the show, I was speaking to Amina Salihu of the MacArthur Foundation and the Honorable Minister for Communications, Innovation and Digital Economy, Dr. Bosun Tijani, and they both mentioned the need to hold big tech accountable, both from government and civil society organizations. How would we go about holding big tech accountable? Is it even possible?
It is possible, and it is very possible. I say that again. And we've recorded some gains as Luminate, working in the EU. It's possible, but we have to also know that it takes consistency and being clear from the start why that needs to happen, because technology obviously has its gains. We know about the different ways that it can improve processes. It can ensure that people have access, people have mobilized just because we have technology. But we've also seen the harms to people's mental health, to children, being bullied. So there are several harms, and we have to put the responsibility where it lies, which is with the tech platforms. So it's the way that we tell the story. So it's also an invitation, I guess, to all of us working in the information ecosystem to make sure that we're telling the story and putting the humans at the heart of the story, as against telling the story about technology, which sometimes can be abstract. And the story has been, the narrative has been one-sided all through.
So make it relatable.
Make it
relevant
relatable
to our lives and our
Make it
experiences.
relatable and put the human beings at the heart
I love
of it.
that.
Put the human beings at the heart of it, because also that is what has been missing. Yes. Big tech has either to prioritize profits over humans. So what we need to do is to tell that story and to show how that doing that is harming people that are close to people, basically. So if you highlight how, for instance, X person in this place has been harmed by the negligence or the willful attention to and prioritization of profits over safeguarding human beings, then I think it is more acceptable, more relatable by everyone. And then people can take action or put their, their representatives, their governments, and everyone who should be responsible for ensuring that the regulations and the space is healthy, essentially calling big tech to account again, if I must say that.
Thank you for those insights. Toyin, as we wind up, I'd love to know, what do you do to let your hair down? And it's glorious hair, by the way. What do you do to just take a break and say, I've worked hard enough, I'm now just going to relax and unwind?
I love music of all genres. Don't ask me what genre.
What are you currently listening to?
I love Asha.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I'm listening to her latest album.
Have you ever seen her perform live?
No.
Okay, she's
I would
incredible.
love to do that. No,
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
I know. I've seen her performance.
Yeah.
So that's also something that I might do with some of my friends.
Okay, I love that.
Go look for her.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And finally, Toyin, what would you say to funders and development partners listening to this podcast? What should their take-home be?
So I think more funders just need to continue, because they've done amazing work so far, continue to build partnerships, to build connections and collaborations across issues, and to continue to understand that we're working to address systems as against the different silos that our work and our strategies require us to build, and to continue essentially to speak to one another. I will forever reference the amazing results, or the results of the collaboration that exists, for instance, here in Nigeria and across the different spaces where we work, where funders have been able to pool their resources of time and funding together to address specific issues. That is important, and I think that should continue. There are issues that connect us. There are also issues that are specific to the different funders, but there's something connecting us. It is the systems, that all of us are working within and working to address and to contribute to, and the change that we are trying to effect in the world. So it's my charge is just basically to say, well done, but there's work to do, more work to do.
What a beautiful note to end on. Toyin, I've really enjoyed this conversation. It's been insightful, engaging, and given me a fresh take and perspective, especially on technology and AI. Right. I have been speaking to the Vice President representing Africa at Luminate, Toyin Akinniyi, and this has been Talk to Me Direct. Thank you.